Good afternoon, everyone. Caresoft Technology would like to welcome you to our ServiceNow Federal Tech Talk, Federal Service Delivery, a ServiceNow Partner Showcase. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items. Please note that all lines have been muted to reduce any kind of background noise during the presentation. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A pod on the left side of your screen, and we will do our best to answer by the end of the presentation or follow up with you offline. This webinar is being recorded and a copy will be emailed to you. Just to tell you a little bit about Caresoft, we are a trusted government IT solution provider supporting public sector organizations across federal, state, and local government agencies, including education and healthcare markets. At this time, I'd like to hand the floor over to our speakers.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Heather. And thank you to the Caresoft team for your collaboration and just making today happen. We certainly appreciate the sponsorship. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sade Ardani. I am joined by my partner in crime, Kevin Adler, and we will be your hosts for today. We are part of the federal team here at ServiceNow supporting our customer workflows in the DoD. And to just briefly describe the area of focus that we have on the platform, you might recognize ServiceNow as a platform of automation with digital workflows intended for IT purposes. But today we're going to focus on how ServiceNow has been able to accommodate workflows outside of IT and in the mission space. So our focus is how federal and DoD agencies are also delivering a mission to the broad audiences that they serve. And in our experience, it's this service delivery that we often see having very disconnected processes, and in bringing together these different parties and the different stakeholders in their ecosystem. So certainly a great need for automation and digital transformations like the ones that we're all used to in our personal lives. So take a screenshot of this. Please connect with Kevin and I to learn more. This afternoon, we are joined by two phenomenal partners that are going to be showcasing their expertise in delivering to this mission space. So over the next hour, we will focus on two different federally inspired workflow use cases that encourage external engagement as well as automation for tasks in cross-organizational workflows. I'm going to drop some links here about each of the partners as we proceed, so please keep your eye in the chat box. We ask that you please participate, ask questions. We'll do our best to answer them as they come in, but know that we'll leave some time at the end of our presentation to talk through a couple. So to introduce our first partner, I'm going to hand things over to Mr. Kevin Adler. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Sade. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for spending time with us. I support the U.S. Army here at ServiceNow with our customer and industry workflows, and I'm excited to hear from Accenture, and I'm excited to hear New Rocket's solutions that they built for our mission-focused scenarios today. Before I have the privilege of introducing New Rocket, for everyone on the line, I just want to level set and introduce, make sure everyone's familiar with the tool set that New Rocket and Accenture are building with. It's our customer and industry workflows modules here at ServiceNow. There are lots of different moving parts at ServiceNow and even more in the federal government. And oftentimes inefficient processes make serving the constituent, the customer, the soldier, the taxpayer, serving that user very slow and difficult and costly. Oftentimes on the left of this screen, you'll recognize that when that user goes to that federal agency or that state and local agency and they ask for something or they need service delivered for them, that service request can go into what we call a black hole. And you can see all of the connected partners, the employees, the constituents, the services, all of those workflows that are disconnected so frequently in our federal accounts. And they have to work with the tools that have been given to them thus to date. So we've got a lot of customers in the federal sector working with on-premise software, legacy tools that are siloed, that are not componentized so that you cannot read and write and share information from those siloed investments. And we have a tremendous amount of use today of federal forms, PDF forms, paper forms that need to be manually filled out, returned either digitally or through the fax machine. And the result of that from a service perspective is it can take days and weeks for that requester to seriously get the answer they were searching for. And what ServiceNow is able to do with our partners is to change that whole experience so that you've got the entire agency working to deliver great customer experiences to that end user, regardless of where they are for that journey. So for instance, on the far left of your screen, you've got that same end user, that citizen, that taxpayer, that soldier, et cetera, going through that omni-channel approach, that experience that can do self-service, that experience that's very commonplace, like Sade mentioned, in our private lives at night. But the agency then has the ability to track and manage all of the tasks that are associated with resolving or fulfilling that request and that service delivery through logistics, through contracts, through legal, through real estate, through inspections. Wherever those tasks need to go, ServiceNow allows our partners to deliver a frictionless experience built upon our tools today. So I'll flip this over to Matt, but the beauty here is that the resulting outcome for these users using a digital service catalog, which you'll see, and using digital forms that are very, very easy, and being able to be proactively engaged with issues that pop up, the result is that you get the result in hours or days versus weeks. And that's a big game changer for our partners and for our federal agencies that we serve today. So Matt's going to talk about a solution that's built with customer service management. And with that, I will flip the microphone over to you, Matt.
So from our perspective in New Rocket, let's first just roll into who New Rocket is. So one is we're an elite partner with ServiceNow. We do obviously federal services. We also work in the commercial side, but additionally, we also provide support for federal practice as well. So once agencies and clients go to deploy, we also can work with our clients to help them support the care and feeding of the platform, and also provide direction moving forward. From a overall perspective, we are a global company, but heavy U.S. focus within the Fed practice. And from our perspective, we definitely follow the path of ServiceNow guruism, if that's a word, where we do pursue certifications as well as having a lot of experience with our clients, and we also strive pretty hard to get a good customer success score. So from our perspective, we have been operating, just a final thought around the Fed side. We are currently engaged within civilian side as well as DoD and fourth estate. And ultimately, we're doing a myriad of different items and different deployments, from IT to HR to SecOps to others, and also some more specialized stuff that I will talk about today. About myself, been around for a while, about 25 years, worked on early platforms like Remedy, and about 10 years ago made the wonderful leap into ServiceNow, and have been working both on the Fed side and commercial. And with that, we'll move into the scenario. So from this perspective, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a client. I won't name names, but ultimately it's a federal client that has lots and lots of properties that it engages within leases. And ultimately, from our perspective, they had a lot of challenges with current system. And with current system, one is, and I'll just, as I'm building out this bullet point, on the right-hand side, you'll see a kind of a data model of what you're going to be seeing in a demo. Ultimately, we're going to be scratching a surface on capability. This is on a dev box, so I'm not using client solution, if you will, or client data. It's all demo data, and we did organize it just for this presentation today. But ultimately, what you're going to see is the client really had issues. One with difficulty requesting for property. So whether it was, hey, we need new property, we need to renew a lease, we need to terminate a lease, it was all paper-based, all, not paper-based, but email-based, spreadsheets, phone calls, and it was really difficult. And so what you'll see today is we've established a very simple portal where the requester team, which are really a team of real estate folks that are working with the Fed clients, to help identify property needs and be able to go into a portal to submit what they're finding, renewal leases, terminates, et cetera. Number two, and then what you'll see is there's going to be 3 catalog items that were established, 2 for renew that go into general requests that will launch very simple workflows that have approvals and reviews. And then additionally, for new property leases, the client wanted to have a more complex workflow, and they really wanted to run it like a project because ultimately it was not only acquiring the property, which is a very time-consuming real estate, agents, et cetera. But once they secure it, they may actually have to go do construction. They may actually have to do design, environmental surveys, which was very important for the client. And you'll see a little bit of that in the demo, and ultimately being able to manage things through it. Additionally, what you'll see is they also wanted to have a knowledge base to help answer questions up front at a tier 0 event. Number two, they also had the inability to really see properties and be able to understand. One is, are they being occupied? So is there anybody using the property, or is it a dead piece of property that they're paying money on? And number two is ultimately being able to see kind of that information, but also being able to see other things such as the contracts, historical contracts associated to it. So things that are current contracts, expired contracts, the value of those contracts. And then finally, last but not least, is ultimately they wanted to see what environmental laws are impacting those locations. So some sites near the coast may have endangered species, or especially if you have logistics or operations, there may be noise issues that they want to be able to highlight for those properties and be able to understand as they do their surveys and they do their work, that they can take those into account. So, and then finally, what they also wanted was the ability to have reports and the capability of doing reporting. What you'll see today is I've actually generated a dashboard with a lot of reports, just to kind of show you a bird's eye view of the system and be able to give you that that good look and feel, if you will, of what this real estate solution needs to do. And ultimately, just the final point on this is the demonstration today is conceptual and capability. So so if you're looking at real estate, or if you're looking at any other business challenge or business need that does need to have workflow, does need to have a portal, and it does need to be able to allow you to manage your work properly. And again, it may be untraditional things. This is where you can get your wheels turning to review this. With that being said, I'm going to move into the demo. So to kick off the demo, currently we're in ServiceNow, just a very basic portal to set up for the demonstration. And ultimately, I'm going to be somebody who's working with Fed clients and helping them identify property needs. And so from my perspective, I need limited access in to be able to submit either a new property request, a renewal of an existing lease, or the termination of a lease. And so from here, again, if you're familiar with ServiceNow, this is a base area where I can go in and do simple searches such as lease. And then I'd be able to see a hit list back on here. So I'm able to see items such as, terminate property lease, renew lease, what have you, as well as knowledge articles associated to it based on keyword searches. So from this perspective, I'm able to maneuver through a very simple interface. Additionally, you also can do more formal where I want to go in and request something. So from here, I can request something, and I can go specifically areas such as I did demo Fed leasing. And so I'm able to look at this information here and say, you know what, I have three things I can actually do here. I can either propose a new property lease, renew a property lease, or terminate a lease. And so what I'll demonstrate now is I'll demonstrate the creation of two of them just to show look and feel. And then later we'll go flip the script and go in as a manager to review the work and to review that area as well. So within the proposed new lease, so here I'm clicking on this interface, and this is bringing up a very simple form to fill out. Just to save time, I'm going to just go here. So there's an individual that needs property in California, and ultimately it's going to be near Walnut Creek, and we want to be able to have that property hopefully secured January 1st. And at this point, we'll leave the end date here. It's not required, and I don't have an estimated cost at this point. So in essence, from a form perspective, and this is a low-code, no-code event where I can go in and create this form, add the fields in that I need, and ultimately, if, for example, over time, people say, hey, we don't know estimated costs, can you remove it? We can always go in there and remove it without calling a developer to do it. It's, you have an administrator go in, and it's a very simple removal or add if you want to add something. So from here, I have this information. I also can do attachments. So from an attachment perspective, I can give, like I did a satellite view of the actual park, where I would like to be located, and I'm ready to go. So at this point, I can hit submit. And so at this point, the property lease has been submitted, but ultimately I've routed this form or this service catalog item to project. So this is actually moved into a project area that it will eventually go through a review cycle. And if it's approved, then it'll go on into a more formal project. So we'll look at that form in a little bit, just to show kind of capability and where you can route. But ultimately I have my information here. Again, I'm now the requester, confirmation that I submitted. I can also put in information. So please give me a call. So from this perspective, I can go in and just add additional attachments and other notes. So from this perspective, as a real estate advocate, if you will, for my Fed clients, I've just submitted something that used to take me a couple emails to get moving. but now it's in a work queue and a service desk for the real estate team. And they know that this is my request out there, date, timestamp, and all that good stuff. Additionally, I also am working with the same client, and I want to be able to do a renewal. So from there, I just go and request something, and I'm going to go to renew property lease, click there. Again, new form, I can identify who's requesting. I can change it if necessary. I also can pick locations that are identified as part of this. So I'm going to look at Indianapolis as the location, put in any additional reasons. I'm just going to say, I like the space, or they like the space, right? Like the space. Any other attachments, which are at this point not required. And additionally, as I'm looking for this, I also, if I'm a new person, I also have related articles. So I can say, you know what, I am new here and I want to make sure I'm putting the right information in. So I can go to this knowledge article, and for the sake of time, I'm going to just open a new tab. So from a new tab perspective, let me do that really quick here. So from a new tab perspective, I can go to the knowledge article here, and then also be able to see any type of additional information that's attached to it. So at my fingertips, I have all the information I need for this request form. I have related articles that can help me understand what I'm doing or provide additional information for me as a submitter, and be able to also rank the items as well. But ultimately, at this point, just to summarize, I've come into this form, I've identified who I am, again, automatically. I've identified the location that I'd like to renew at this point, information about it, any attachments, and also I looked at a knowledge article to confirm that I'm doing it right and right information. And then from there, I can submit. And at that point, there is an hour request here for requests, was it 116? And then from there, I can renew the property lease, review that, similar look and feel of activities, attachments, additional details as well. So from this perspective, what I've done in less than 5 minutes is I've submitted 2 pieces of work that are gone to the real estate desk. They're now in queue. And when I flip the switch, I'll be the manager and be able to look at this information and be able to manage it as well. So I will keep going. And I'm normally used to doing questions, but at this point, I'll just keep moving along here. All right, so with that, moving over here. So I flipped the script. At this point, I flipped the script on it. So now what you're looking at is I'm now the manager. And for this demonstration, I generated a dashboard that has a series of tabs. So right now is my work management tab. I also have location and values, so I can look at the locations of where I'm leasing and the values of that. I also have a listing of expired contracts and when they're going to expire. And this, for the Fed partner, was a very big deal, and actually still is, because they're still compiling the information. But ultimately, they're caught in a lot of reactionary situations where a lot of the information was in documents somewhere and not represented in a system that was able to provide a visual or even proactive notification to say, hey, you're 90 days out for an expiration of a $600,000 a year lease. You need to look at this before you start getting into legal wranglings, if you will, with trying to fight a lease that you don't need. And then additionally, for environmental laws, you also have this as well. So you're able to associate the environmental laws that are on the books within the system to be able to associate it to the property. And I'll go into more of this information later, but ultimately I want to look at the work management perspective. So from a work management perspective, I'm able to look at, ultimately what's in my queue. So what's new, what's renew, what's terminated, but also I added a couple of quality assurance items here as well, such as I noticed that there are 2 assignments that do not have assignments, and I also have one that's missing a location. So from here, I can go in and say, from a work queue perspective, I'm going to go in and click here. I'm going to look at these 2 that need assignment. And so I have these 2 items here. I have one renew property lease for a place in Troy, Michigan. And then I have another place that actually is missing the location that I need to add. So from here, I can go into, and I'll go into this first property record here. So this is the property record for renewing. And so from here, I'm able to go in and, oh, I made a mistake on that one. So from there, I'm able to establish that Indianapolis street at this point. And then additionally, I can go in and be able to review this and update the record. And additionally, for assignments, I can go in and from here, I can just double click and I can go look at and assign to specific groups on the fly. So ultimately, I can go in and be able to manage not only directly from the record itself. So if I go into the record for Troy, Michigan, I'm able to look at this particular record and be able to see, the item details. Sorry about that. Let me go over here. Let's say I've got a little sidetrack there. Here we go. Just go to the renew area. So if I go into the, sorry about that, if I go into the renew area, able to click on that. So what I'm able to see in the renew area here is I'm able to see the actual request item itself and be able to see, ultimately the requester location and then who's requesting in the original items that were submitted in. So from here, I'm able to manage this and be able to assign the work and complete the work as well. And then just to wrap up, I know we're kind of running short on time here, but in terms of wrapping up, what I want to end on, if you will, is going back to the favorites and going back to the dashboard. So from a dashboard perspective, what I want to do is just take a look at the value that the client has really loved, and which is ultimately the ability to review from a location perspective, be able to move to a location. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do drill down and move into a location record, and really allowing ServiceNow and the ability to associate and relate data together has been huge in terms of a value for the client, because it gives them that visual capability to be able to see, in essence, what is influencing a key piece of data, and ultimately how they can react or proact against that particular area. So the final thing that I'll show is just as I'm moving into this location, I'm able to use, and this is all out of the box ServiceNow capability, report capabilities, and be able to drill into, actually let me go back out one. No, there's a better one here. So let me go, here we go. So go in here. So I'm able to go, for example, into La Jolla and be able to look at this particular property, and I'm able to then go into the actual contract itself and be able to see the contract that is here. So at this point, I'm in a 5-year contract for La Jolla and be able to see the yearly costs and everything else to it. And additionally, I'm able to go look at the location associated to it. And if I need to pivot to that location and review it, then from there, I can go to this location at Silver Street, click on the location. I can say, you know what, this is more information, this is great, but I want to look at the location itself and I want to see some of the history. So from there, I'm able to go to the location. I'm able to see the contracts, both expired and active. And then from there, I'm also able to look at environmental laws that are potentially impacting this particular site. And I want to make sure that I'm aware of those as I'm managing this, because, for example, the environmental laws will impact if I have to do renewals or I have to do inspections. These are things, for example, California-based laws have to be taken into account and work has to be applied to it, which again, from a ServiceNow perspective, again, I'm scratching the surface on the request area, would be able to support with workflows and tasks. And then a final note is if I'm pivoting to the environmental side, I'm able to look at the environmental law, and I'm also able to see all the sites that are associated to this particular law that I need to take into account and be able to report on as well. So with that, I'm going to wrap up the demo, and I wanted to see if there's any questions. If not, I'll just turn it back to the team.
Matt, thank you. It's Kevin Adler. There is one question that Dean asked before we proceed with the second portion of the presentation. Dean, you asked, what do the customers do in this portal? It looks like the internal screens so far, correct? Matt, are you able to address that?
Can you repeat the question? I want to make sure I understand that. Sorry about that.
Sure. You initially showed, Matt, the customers go to the portal and put in the requirements for Walnut Creek, and they put in the picture of that the area that they wanted. But Dean is asking, what do the customers do in the portal? It looks like internal screens so far.
Oh, so from a portal perspective, they're able to go in here and be able to submit. Additionally, again, this is from the demo perspective. If we want to be able to have them review existing items or be able to do additional work, we can provide that capability.
Fantastic. Thank you. So with that, Sade, I'll twist it over to you.
Excellent. And let me just share my screen again. So before I introduce our second partner, what we just saw was what Matt brilliantly demonstrated was leveraging our customer service management to request property and to manage a complex workflow and ultimately bring it to resolution. To build out of that out-of-the-box solution that we just spoke about, ServiceNow has actually built industry-specific solutions on top of our traditional CSM. And we're really excited to introduce our public sector digital service solution. And with this, bringing a government-specific solution, government-specific data models, experiences, and workflows. So this is something that has been purpose-built to address the complexities in government agencies, including how they interact interagency to interagency, interagency, agency to agency services, as well as public-facing or constituent-focused use cases. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Will at Accenture.
All right. Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to come talk to you guys. Thanks so much. I'm going to do the same thing that you guys kind of ran through, a little bit about who we are and what do we do. You know, Accenture Federal, I'm sure all of you guys have probably heard about Accenture. We are one of the largest ServiceNow partners that you have in the ecosystem, especially on the federal side. Globally, we've got about 15,000 resources. In the federal sector, we have a little over 300, and we've got somewhere around 900 certifications that we really lean into with our platform partner with ServiceNow to make sure that everybody that's engaged on the platform has the right experience to be able to deliver the right outcomes on those things. Not only are we one of the largest partners, but we're also one of the largest customers. So outside of people like AT&T or the Veterans Affairs, you have Accenture, who is one of the largest adopters of ServiceNow as a platform. So I would normally say that we eat our own dog food, but I keep getting slapped on the wrist for saying those things. We drink our own champagne. We do support ServiceNow as both a customer and as a market leader. A little bit about me. I am one of 182, I just learned this the other day, 182 ServiceNow certified master architects around the globe. There are currently 56 in the United States. 6 of those are at Accenture Federal. I am one of those 6. I've been doing technology things for a little over 20 years, and that kind of covers the whole gamut of everything from enterprise IT to consulting and managing cloud platforms to now managing cloud ServiceNow and the architecture and delivery of that. I'm also a Marine Corps veteran, so I know while Kevin was saying he supports the Army and like I'm about that a little bit, the Marine Corps is obviously the better choice of services to go out and support, so I'm going to have to give the shout out to my Marine brethren. So what are we getting into, right? One of the things that we want to talk about is the Foia process. Sade asked me to come in and talk about Foia and what are we doing with Foia and how are we building it onto the platform. I think it's the important thing to note that when one of the essential citizen services that the government provides is the ability to ask questions to our government about the information that they have in their hands. Now, not all of it is going to be something that they can share, but the ability to even ask that is important. So I put this quote up here from Thomas Jefferson saying, information is the currency of democracy. It said Thomas Jefferson maybe, because when I looked that quote up, they said it might have been attributed to Thomas Jefferson, but it is never directly captured him saying it. So when we look at the Foia challenge, what are the challenges that we see from a Foia process, and how are we building it into the ServiceNow capability, ServiceNow platform as a capability, and how are we sharing that across our government customers? So one of the big things that we see, especially as it comes to Foia, is a huge backlog of requests. Part of this challenge is because when we get into Foia and the requests, there's a huge volume of requests that comes through. So right now, some of our customers have a backlog of about 13,000 different Foia requests, which if they continue to work at a steady pace would take them 2 years to clear out only the backlog, not including any new requests that are coming in. Part of the challenge you have is across different customers, there's a dynamic data set that you're asking for, right? You're not going to ask for the same things from the Department of State that you would ask for from USDA or Fish and Wildlife Services or whomever. So you have to make sure that any solution that you put in place is dynamic enough to be able to capture those requirements from a data input perspective so that it can be routed and the requests can be routed and managed the correct way to the right people so that you can provide the correct information back to whoever the requester is. And like I said, not only is it that you're making the request, but you have to review that request. And when you're responding back, making sure that you're getting the right information back, and not all of that is able to be shared. So the ability to be able to review and approve the information that's coming back and potentially garner that information from a different agency. If you're coming from DHS and you're asking for a specific set of information that one of the other agencies might have, you have to be able to route that between those and capture that data and manage that request and manage that ask, because now the FOIA request is spanning multiple agencies. So how do you capture that? What are you doing from that perspective? And how are you reporting on those things to make sure that you're tracking the resolution of these requests for your government agencies? So one of the things that we have is a better user experience for that. How have we done that? Accenture Federal has what's called its intelligent forms engine. So the intelligent forms engine does something that's very unique, and it's built on the ServiceNow platform into the customer workflows portion. One of the things we're doing is taking those digital forms or those paper forms that the government has already, creating a digital forms process from either OCR recognition or from a digital recognition piece that goes in and validates the data that's in those forms and makes sure that we're putting the correct workflow behind it, and then adding those areas where we have workflow and approval and e-signatures where needed to be able to integrate that form intake process into the existing FOIA process. This is really important because it provides a better, more lean experience for citizens to be able to come in and make those requests for any kind of data that they might be looking for on any kind of form that they might be looking for. We see a lot of different forms that come from things like your SF-86s or your SARs or your whatever it's going to be. The FOIA process is no different on that front. So when we look at how are we engaging, how are we making sure that we're streamlining this process to be able to allow citizens to be able to make those requests and then route it via a workflow, an intelligent workflow on the back end, ServiceNow makes the most sense on how we're doing that. We're looking at the possible data aggregation for what we're looking for from a, hey, how are we seeing this data come in from different areas, different parts of organizations, different agencies, different departments? Are we able to make this a more quick response by saying, we've seen this data, we've seen these requests come in, and moving those along more quickly to be able to help shovel out that backlog of requests that are coming in. So one of the ways we're doing this is by taking forms that maybe are already not in a digital format and creating them into a digital format. We do that through a combination of platform intake with the OCR recognition, plus a coupling with a capability called Hyperscience, which allows us to manage the digital intake of those forms. When we get into that point where we're creating those digital forms, it allows us to start creating that form library so that when we get into the point where we're managing this across the public sector digital service, PSDS with ServiceNow, we can take the forms that we've already built and the templates that we've already built and the workflows that we've already built with the capability of the intelligent forms engine on top of that. And we can start sharing that across the government agencies so that there's limited rework and they can quickly interoperate with this capability across the government and across those government agencies. And they can see the kinds of workflows that we're putting in place with the kinds of requests and digital form actions that we're taking across those different agencies and government-wide. One of the big questions we get is, can we take the work that we've done at other agencies and other parts of the government and reuse that? Well, in this sense, we could, because we're taking the work that we've done, sharing it across the PSDS ecosystem with our capability that's already built onto that, with these templates that are being created, and then we can move forward much quickly so that customers can go out there and actually start integrating that digital process into their FOIA request piece. One of the things we want to look at is, how are we managing that piece? What's the workflow behind that going to look like? A typical FOIA workflow looks like a request, review, redact, respond type workflow. The citizens are coming in, making those requests. We have to make sure that the requests are valid. We have to make sure that the data that's being asked for is the right kind of data, that it's the right thing that they're asking for, that it's able to be requested. And then we have to go look for that data and make sure that we can respond to it, have the data available, can actually go out and pass that along. So if you look on the right-hand side here, where we're looking at the records, search, validation, and consultation, we're looking at, hey, this data is coming in, this is being made from a citizen request. And we have cases, this is a workflow example from the Department of State. So when we look at how are cases and referrals and consultations being managed and tracked, we're looking at those areas and the different groups that would be responsible for responding to those types of requests, and then moving into the review and response piece. One of the challenges that we have is when you're responding, you have to redact certain information. So when we're integrating with things like Adobe or some of the other capabilities that allow us to go back and create those PDF responses and create those redactions on the platform itself, that ability to redact helps us be able to quickly respond and manage the responses to those things, and then keep those artifacts of response so that we can quickly respond to future requests for the same kind of data. And as the information becomes more readily available or changes, or the ability to make those requests changes on how you can respond back, we can quickly update and manage those redactions through the digital footprint that's created using intelligent forms and the digital records that are created in ServiceNow. The nice thing about all of that is when you're managing those requests and they're coming through, we're looking to leverage the workflow of the process to be able to bring in those form intakes. How are you creating those new forms? How are you creating those forms in the system? What do they look like? Does it look like a form in ServiceNow? No, not necessarily. The idea is that we bring those forms in, whether they exist or not, into the ecosystem, bring them into the platform, bring them into ServiceNow, bring them into an area where customers don't know the difference on what they're seeing. So they'll see the front end form that looks just like the digital form, the government form that they're going to be filling out. And when they get to the point where they're submitting and managing and tracking that process, everyone end to end, both the citizen piece, the user piece, the responder piece, the approver piece, everyone's going to be able to see that form in its native format. So there's no question about, hey, where is this data? What am I looking for? What am I looking at? The rework and organizational change behind those things is limited based on, hey, this looks familiar, right? So if we're looking at the familiar form intakes and we're managing the request and the easy intake of those forms and the easy creation of those digital processes, that's where ServiceNow comes into play. We're able to build that in. We've got this capability built out. We know what it looks like. We know how we're trading in those capabilities so that we're bringing the forms in, and then how we're building out the workflow behind that with some intelligent automation that's looking at the forms, doing some intelligence of, hey, these forms look for these data fields, and we're creating those, and then we're moving forward. And then we're able to quickly report on those too. Because one of the other pieces that we're looking at from a reporting perspective or from a Foia perspective is how are we reporting on those cases? How are we reporting on the metrics? So for what people are requesting, how many requests have been made, to what agencies, for what kinds of data, at what classification level, and what is the status of those requests? So bringing in that form logic that has that stuff built into it already with the workflow behind it allows us to easily track and see from a higher level where those things are at. Whereas traditionally, you wouldn't have been able to see that kind of data in any one place. Now you can see all of those different kinds of requests that are coming in and manage the flow of those requests that are coming in. So I know that we're looking at building this in on a case management solution. And the reason that we do that is because we want to use CSM to be able to manage a lot of those external contacts with the overall requests that are being made. And it's transforming that essential citizen service because we're building CSM in on top of the intelligent forms capability, integrating with some of the other capabilities that are out there to integrate with ServiceNow from an Adobe perspective or Hyperscience perspective or OCR perspective, anything else that they might have in there, and then moving that into an archival perspective. So how we're looking at managing and maintaining and responding to those digital records is bringing it within that CSM framework and then sharing it and making it available to our federal customers using PSDS has been a huge jump. One of the things that PSDS allows us to do is take those capabilities that exist that we're bringing to the platform that are more configuration or customization to the platform itself outside of the normal capabilities, and then sharing that across the government, which is something that all of our federal customers are able to benefit from almost immediately. And then that dynamic form intake, when we're looking at the dynamic data behind that, when we bring it to PSDS, crossing those interagency boundaries and making sure that we are tracking those dynamic form styles and types so that we can report on those and then share those across our customers is really helping to accelerate the adoption of something like a Foia process into the platform itself. So I've got the bringing it all together here, but you're looking at those processes between Foia and the intelligence form engine and PSDS and ServiceNow and CSM, and looking at the ways that we can couple all of those capabilities together to make it so that there's one seamless integrated capability that they can adopt quickly across the processes to get this capability in place for any one customer. I think a lot of customers are looking to pivot to a more digital capability around Foia, but it's one of those things where we don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every single time. So this allows us to do that stuff. If you guys want to connect with us and see a live demo of the intelligent form engine in action, I was planning on having that here today, so I'm sorry that it's not up and running, but it is available to see. And if you guys want to see it, feel free to connect with me, and I'm happy to share that with you and show you how it's taking those forms and creating those workflows and bringing it to PSDS and how we're able to quickly integrate that into your ecosystem. So thanks for having me, Sade. I really appreciate you guys. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer any questions that are on that.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Will. Great job. I'm gonna have Kevin just address a few questions that we've gotten kind of in private. And then if anybody wants to submit some, that now is the time.
And while we're waiting, Sade, let me throw some questions at Matt that I received. So Matt, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I'm here.
So we got a question from Linda. She asked, is the real estate solution that you walked us through, is that out of the box from ServiceNow?
No, it is not, but it used all out of the box capabilities. So what they're doing is low code, no code. So it's configuration of forms, but ultimately it's leveraging most of the things you've seen there was leveraging request, project, as well as location. There's only, I think, 2 forms I had to make custom.
Excellent.
But actually, the follow-up question for that one is ultimately for what ServiceNow provides out of the box, right? So, when it comes to, for example, IT or HR or what have you, there are these modules and structures and frameworks that are already in place, and ServiceNow has done a great job kind of establishing the base and some best practices. But also when it comes to CSM, the beauty of it is it provides the base and the framework. But then you're able to do things such as real estate and Foia. And again, we work with clients that, actually manage armaments and other things where it, moves far away from, like, I guess, traditional items. And, the solution does allow you to pivot and to represent, the data that you need and the processes to support that transaction. And also the entitlement security, who can, for example, request, access to a firing range as an example.
Sure. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any other questions for Matt or Will or Sade or myself? You can enter them into the chat box. There's one.
I see there is a question about getting a copy of the decks presented. Yes, we can make sure to distribute that as follow-up. All right. Well, first of all, folks, thank you for spending your afternoon with us. I really want to give a big shout out to Will and Matt. Really, the purpose of today was to expand the mind of you all in the audience for what the art of the possible with out-of-the-box workflows and ServiceNow, what we can do and shed light on some of these brilliant partners. So I've put some links in the chat. Please take a look at their profiles. It's rare to come across folks that can solution and provide the actual delivery and implementation very flawlessly. So I applaud you and I appreciate you both. Thank you to the Accenture and New Rocket teams. Big virtual round of applause. Thank you all for joining.
Thanks, Sade and Kevin, for setting it up and for the time. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, Heather.
Really appreciate the opportunity.